Hi guys, welcome back. If you're looking for your next favorite read, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit subscribe and let's jump in.
Dear listeners, welcome to Books for Soul, where stories come alive and magic lingers in every breath we take. Today, we embark on a wondrous journey into a realm that has enchanted millions across the globe. A realm where owls deliver mail, broomsticks defy gravity, and the mundane masks the marvelous. Welcome to the enchanting world of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Before we begin, take a moment to imagine a perfectly ordinary street called Privet Drive, where perfectly ordinary people live perfectly ordinary lives. But beneath this facade of normalcy, something extraordinary was about to unfold. A story that began on a dark night when a mysterious old man named Albus Dumbledore appeared on this very street, his bright blue eyes twinkling behind half-moon spectacles as he prepared to change one small boy's life forever. This story isn't just about wands and spells. It's a tale of love so profound, it conquers death, friendships resilient enough to withstand any trial, and courage that blooms in the most unassuming hearts. It's the story of a boy confined to a cupboard under the stairs, unaware that destiny was about to open a door to a world beyond his wildest imaginings. Let me take you back to where it all began. On that fateful Halloween night, the most feared dark wizard of all time, Lord Voldemort, came to Godric's Hollow seeking the Potter family. James Potter, a brave wizard, fell first, trying to protect his wife and child. Lily Potter, standing between Voldemort and her baby's crib, made the ultimate sacrifice. Her love created a protection so powerful that when Voldemort turned his wand on young Harry Potter, the killing curse rebounded, leaving only a lightning-shaped scar on the baby's forehead and reducing the Dark Lord to less than a shadow. That night, Harry Potter became known as the boy who lived. While the wizarding world celebrated their freedom from Voldemort's reign of terror, a small bundle was being delivered to number 4, Privet Drive. Albus Dumbledore, along with Professor McGonagall and the gentle half-giant Hagrid, left baby Harry with his only remaining relatives, the Dursleys. For 10 long years, Harry Potter grew up knowing nothing of his true identity. His Aunt Petunia, his mother's sister, and Uncle Vernon did everything in their power to suppress any sign of magic in their household. They doted on their son Dudley while treating Harry as an unwanted burden. Harry slept in a cupboard under the stairs, wore Dudley's oversized hand-me-downs, and served as his cousin's personal punching bag. But magic isn't something that can be suppressed forever. Strange things always happened around Harry. Once, when Aunt Petunia cut his hair so short he was almost bald, it grew back overnight. Another time, when Dudley and his gang were chasing him at school, Harry somehow found himself on the roof of the school kitchens. And then there was the incident at the zoo, where Harry discovered he could talk to snakes, though he didn't know this was a rare ability called Parseltongue. The Dursleys explained away these incidents as freakish behavior, but deep down, they feared the day Harry would discover his true nature. They had sworn, when they took him in, that they would stamp out that dangerous nonsense. But you can't stamp out what someone is born to be. You can't deny the magic that flows through their veins. As Harry's 11th birthday approached, strange things began happening at number 4, Privet Drive. It started with a letter, a peculiar letter, addressed with impossible precision. Mr. H. Potter, the cupboard under the stairs. Uncle Vernon destroyed it before Harry could read it, but that was just the beginning. More letters came, 2, then 4, then dozens, then hundreds. They came down the chimney, through the mail slot, hidden inside eggs, until finally, Uncle Vernon snapped. He packed up the family and fled to a tiny shack on a rock in the sea, convinced he could outrun whatever magic was pursuing them. But on the stroke of midnight, as Harry lay on the cold floor counting down the seconds to his 11th birthday, everything was about to change. The tiny shack shook with a tremendous boom. Someone was outside, knocking to come in. That thunderous knock was followed by a crash as the door fell clean off its hinges, and there stood the largest man Harry had ever seen. Rubeus Hagrid, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts, filled almost the entire doorway of the tiny shack. With his wild, tangled black hair and beard, and eyes that gleamed like black beetles, he might have seemed frightening if not for the warmth and kindness radiating from his smile. "Last time I saw you, you was only a baby," Hagrid said, looking at Harry with gentle eyes. "You look a lot like your dad, but you have got your mom's eyes." These simple words marked the first time anyone had ever spoken to Harry about his parents with genuine affection. And then, with the casual delivery of a slightly squashed birthday cake, Hagrid began to unravel the web of lies that had surrounded Harry's life for 11 years. Harry Potter was a wizard. Not just any wizard, but one famous throughout the magical world. His parents hadn't died in a car crash as the Dursleys had always claimed. They were murdered by the darkest wizard of all time, Lord Voldemort. The lightning scar on Harry's forehead wasn't just a mark. It was the result of surviving a curse that no one else in history had ever survived. Despite Uncle Vernon's blustering protests and threats, Hagrid took Harry away from that miserable shack and introduced him to a world hidden in plain sight. Their first stop was London's Diagon Alley, a magical shopping street concealed behind a pub called the Leaky Cauldron. As Hagrid tapped the brick wall with his pink umbrella, Harry watched in amazement as the bricks shifted and moved, creating an archway into a street that would change his life forever. Diagon Alley was everything the Muggle world wasn't: vibrant, magical, and full of impossible things. Shops sold cauldrons that stirred themselves, quills that corrected your spelling, and owls of every size and color. Children pressed their noses against windows displaying racing brooms, while witches haggled over the price of dragon liver at the apothecary. Their first stop was Gringotts, the wizard bank run by goblins. Here Harry discovered another shock. He wasn't poor as he'd always believed. His parents had left him a fortune in wizard gold. As they traveled deep underground in a cart that reminded Harry of a wild roller coaster ride, he couldn't help but think how different his life might have been if the Dursleys had known about this vault full of gold. But Gringotts held more than just Harry's inheritance. Hagrid had another mission: to retrieve a tiny package from Vault 713. "Hogwarts business," he said mysteriously. "Very secret." Harry watched as Hagrid pocketed a small, grubby package, not knowing how significant this moment would become. With a pocket full of gold galleons, Harry began collecting his school supplies. Each purchase brought the magical world more vividly to life. At Flourish and Blots, spellbooks lined the walls from floor to ceiling. At Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions, Harry met his first Hogwarts student, a pale, pointed-faced boy who spoke of house rivalries and Quidditch, concepts that were still foreign to Harry. But the most magical moment came at Ollivander's, where Harry would get his wand. Mr. Ollivander, with his silvery eyes that seemed to look right through Harry, explained that the wand chooses the wizard. After trying dozens of wands, Harry finally found his match. Holly and Phoenix Feather, 11 inches, nice and supple. But there was something unusual about this wand. Its Phoenix Feather core had a brother, just one other, and that wand had given Harry his scar. It was Voldemort's wand. As the sun set on Diagon Alley, Harry's head was spinning with everything he'd learned. He wasn't just Harry anymore, the unwanted boy from the cupboard under the stairs. He was Harry Potter, a wizard, the son of Lily and James Potter, and he was about to begin an adventure beyond his wildest dreams. With his new snowy owl Hedwig in her cage and his trunk full of magical supplies, Harry could hardly wait for September 1st, when he would board the Hogwarts Express and begin his new life in the magical world. September 1st arrived with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The Dursleys, showing an unexpected bit of charity, drove Harry to King's Cross Station, though their amusement at leaving him between platforms 9 and 10 suggested they knew something he didn't. Harry stood there, staring at his ticket, which clearly stated Platform 9 3/4, wondering if this had all been some elaborate joke. Just when panic began to set in, Harry overheard a plump woman talking about muggles. Following the family of redheads, he watched in amazement as they disappeared one by one through what appeared to be a solid brick wall. This was the Weasley family, though Harry didn't know yet how important they would become in his life. With guidance from Mrs. Weasley and a dash of courage, Harry pushed his trolley through the barrier and emerged onto platform 9 3/4. The Hogwarts Express stood magnificent before him, its scarlet steam engine gleaming in the morning light. The platform was a chaos of activity: students loading trunks, owls hooting, cats weaving between legs, and parents giving last-minute instructions and goodbyes. With help from the Weasley twins, Fred and George, Harry managed to get his trunk onto the train and found an empty compartment. It was here that Harry met Ron Weasley, the youngest Weasley brother. With his hand-me-down robes, pet rat scabbers, and corned beef sandwiches he didn't even like, Ron seemed as out of place as Harry felt. Their shared uncertainty formed an immediate bond. Ron explained about the wizarding world while Harry shared his chocolate frogs, and a friendship was born over conversations about Quidditch, wizard chess, and the 4 Hogwarts houses. Their journey was interrupted by several visitors. First came Neville Longbottom, searching for his lost toad Trevor. With him was Hermione Granger, already wearing her Hogwarts robes and speaking in rapid-fire sentences about all the spells she'd learned. Though Harry and Ron found her rather bossy at first, they didn't realize they were meeting someone who would become an essential part of their lives. Then came Draco Malfoy, the pale boy from Madame Malkin's, flanked by his large friends Crabbe and Goyle. Malfoy offered Harry his friendship, but his dismissive attitude toward Ron and his family revealed his true nature. Harry's refusal of Malfoy's hand would set the tone for their relationship throughout their school years. As darkness fell outside the train windows, the countryside giving way to wild and rugged landscapes, excitement built among the first years. They changed into their school robes, and finally, the train began to slow. A voice echoed through the train, announcing their arrival at Hogsmeade Station. Leaving their luggage behind, the students spilled onto the platform. Through the darkness came Hagrid's familiar voice, calling Fur's Years? Fur's Years over here. Following the bobbing lantern, the first years made their way down a steep, narrow path that opened suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake. There, perched atop a high mountain on the other side, its windows sparkling in the starry sky, was Hogwarts Castle. The collective gasp from the students echoed across the water. The castle was magnificent, a vast structure of turrets and towers that seemed to have sprung from the pages of a fairy tale. In small boats they glided across the smooth-as-glass lake, the castle growing ever larger as they approached. They passed through a curtain of ivy that hid a wide opening in the cliff face, traveling along a dark tunnel until they reached an underground harbor. As they climbed stone steps to the castle proper, Harry's heart pounded with anticipation. Professor McGonagall met them at the huge oak front doors. Tall and stern-looking, with emerald green robes and her black hair drawn into a tight bun, she embodied everything Harry imagined a witch should be. She led them into a small chamber off the Great Hall, explaining about the sorting ceremony in the 4 houses: Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. The wait in that small chamber felt eternal. Some students whispered about what the sorting might entail. Ron's brothers had told him it hurt a lot, though he wasn't sure whether to believe them. Hermione was whispering all the spells she'd learned, wondering which one she'd need. Neville was checking his pockets one last time for Trevor. And then the ghosts arrived, floating through the wall, pearly white and slightly transparent, deep in conversation about someone called Peeves. Just when the first years thought they couldn't be more amazed, Professor McGonagall returned to lead them into the Great Hall. The Great Hall took Harry's breath away. Thousands of candles floated in mid-air, illuminating 4 long tables where students sat in their black robes. Above, the enchanted ceiling mirrored the night sky outside, stars twinkling through wisps of clouds. Hermione whispered that she'd read about it in Hogwarts. A history. Professor McGonagall placed a 4-legged stool in front of the first years. On top of it sat the sorting hat, patched, frayed, and extremely dirty. The hat twitched, a rip near the brim opened wide like a mouth, and it began to sing. It sang of the 4 houses and their virtues: brave Gryffindor, wise Ravenclaw, loyal Hufflepuff, and cunning Slytherin. One by one, students were called forward. The hat took different amounts of time with each student, sometimes shouting out its decision immediately, other times taking a long moment to decide. Hermione Granger was sorted into Gryffindor, as was Neville Longbottom after a lengthy deliberation. Draco Malfoy was instantly sorted into Slytherin. When Harry's name was called, whispers suddenly broke out across the hall. The last thing Harry saw before the hat dropped over his eyes was the hall full of people craning to get a good look at him. The small voice in his ear debated, plenty of courage, not a bad mind, talent, and a thirst to prove himself. Not Slytherin, Harry thought desperately, and the hat responded, Gryffindor. The Gryffindor table erupted in the loudest cheer yet. Percy the prefect shook his hand vigorously while the Weasley twins yelled, "We got Potter! We got Potter!" Soon after, Ron joined them at the Gryffindor table looking relieved. Classes began the next day, and Harry discovered that there was much more to magic than waving your wand and saying funny words. They studied the night skies through telescopes in astronomy, learned about magical plants in herbology, and dozed through history of magic. The only class taught by a ghost, Professor Binns. Professor McGonagall proved to be strict but brilliant, transforming her desk into a pig and back in their first transfiguration lesson. Professor Flitwick, the tiny charms teacher, squeaked and toppled off his pile of books when he read Harry's name during roll call. But it was potions that proved most challenging. Professor Snape, the potions master, seemed to hate Harry from the moment he stepped into the dungeon classroom. In their very first lesson, Snape questioned Harry about complex potion ingredients, clearly trying to humiliate him. "Clearly fame isn't everything," he sneered. Friday mornings brought excitement with the arrival of mail by owl. Hundreds of owls streamed into the Great Hall during breakfast, dropping letters and packages into their owners' laps. Through this, Harry received his first ever letter, an invitation for tea from Hagrid. That afternoon, Harry and Ron visited Hagrid's hut on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Over rock cakes, literally as hard as rocks, and strong tea, they talked about their first week. Harry noticed a newspaper clipping about a break-in at Gringotts on the very same day he and Hagrid had visited. The vault that was broken into, number 713, had been emptied earlier that day. Harry remembered Hagrid removing that small, grubby package. What was it? And why would someone try to steal it? As the weeks passed, Harry began to feel more at home at Hogwarts. He and Ron became closer friends, and even Hermione, who had initially annoyed them with her know-it-all attitude, started to grow on them. But it wasn't until Halloween that their friendship truly solidified. On Halloween night, the Great Hall was filled with floating pumpkins, bats, and delicious food. But the festivities were interrupted when Professor Quirrell burst in shouting, "Troll in the dungeon! Thought you ought to know," before fainting dramatically. Chaos erupted as students were sent back to their dormitories, but Harry and Ron realized Hermione wasn't with them. She had been crying in the girls' bathroom all evening after an argument with Ron. Without hesitation, Harry and Ron rushed to warn her, only to find themselves face to face with the troll. It was massive, with gray skin, a lumpy body, and a club the size of a tree trunk. In a moment of bravery and quick thinking, Harry jumped onto the troll's back while Ron used the levitation spell they had just learned, Wingardium Leviosa, to knock the troll's club out of its hand and onto its head, knocking it unconscious. When the teachers arrived, Hermione lied to protect them, claiming she had gone looking for the troll herself, and that Harry and Ron had saved her. From that moment on, the three of them were inseparable. As the trio grew closer, they began to uncover more mysteries about Hogwarts. They discovered that the third-floor corridor, which Dumbledore had warned them to avoid, was guarding something. A massive three-headed dog named Fluffy stood over a trapdoor. Hermione noticed that the dog was standing on the trapdoor, and they began to piece together the clues. The package from Gringotts, the break-in attempt, and now this guard dog. Through careful investigation and some help from Hagrid, who occasionally let things slip, they learned about Nicholas Flamel and the Sorcerer's Stone, a legendary object that could transform any metal into pure gold and produce the elixir of life, making the drinker immortal. They realized someone was trying to steal it, and all signs pointed to Professor Snape. However, the truth proved far more complex. After navigating a series of magical challenges designed by different professors, including Devil's Snare, a life-size chess game, and a logic puzzle with potions, Harry found himself face-to-face not with Snape, but with Professor Quirrell. More shocking still was the revelation that Quirrell's turban concealed Lord Voldemort's face on the back of his head. In the final confrontation, Harry discovered that his mother's sacrificial protection still lived within his skin. Quirrell couldn't touch him without experiencing excruciating pain. This protection, combined with Harry's courage and determination, prevented Voldemort from obtaining the stone. Quirrell was defeated, and Voldemort fled, once again reduced to less than a shadow. Epilogue. The beginning of a greater journey. As the school year drew to a close, Harry walked away with more than lessons in spells and potions. He carried with him profound truths about love, friendship, and the quiet bravery that defines true heroism. With Dumbledore's last-minute points, Gryffindor claimed the House Cup, but for Harry, the greatest triumph was discovering a home in Hogwarts and friendships anchored in unwavering loyalty. On the train ride back to London, Harry knew he was leaving one home for another, but the Dursleys didn't frighten him anymore. He had friends who would write to him, a place where he belonged, and the knowledge that he was his parents' son, brave, loved, and capable of extraordinary things. Closing thoughts. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is more than just a tale of magic and adventure. It's a story about the power of love, the importance of choices, and the strength we find in friendship. It reminds us that sometimes the most ordinary-seeming people can be extraordinary, and that magic exists not just in spells and potions, but in the connections we make and the courage we find within ourselves. As we close this chapter of Harry's journey, we're reminded that this is just the beginning. The boy who lived would face greater challenges and darker times ahead, but the foundations of what would help him triumph, love, friendship, and courage were all established here, in this first magical year at Hogwarts. Thank you for joining us on this magical journey through Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Until our next adventure at Books for Soul, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live.